Hi, welcome to another one of my videos in this seems to be a series now of how not to sound foreign in English. These are not really lessons, they are just kind of me giving some thoughts about, after the many years that I've been teaching English, what is it that makes someone sound foreign when they speak English, and what is it that makes somebody sound natural like a native speaker? Alright, so today I've been thinking about the future. When students talk about the future, they don't sound the same as native speakers do. Well, I think I know what this is. But just to confirm my thoughts and experience of the last few years, I decided to check some data. And the data that I checked was, believe it or not, there are people who, linguists and language geeks, who literally count the amount of structures and words and vocabulary and grammatical terms that people use, both native speakers of English and non-native speakers, and they create what they call a corpus of language. I was checking a few, and it confirms more or less what I thought. I think the basic difference is this: there are about 5 different ways that you can talk about the future. I mean, forms or constructions or grammatical tenses, for example, to talk about the future. And native speakers, we tend to use pretty much all of them, 2 or 3 of them particularly, and I'll go into what they are in a minute and what the difference is between them. Students, however, in my experience, just use will. Tomorrow I will meet my friends and we will, have some lunch, or, we'll watch a film or something like that. And when they ask a question, they say, "So, what will you do at the weekend?" And they may answer, "I will work," or something like this. Will. And I checked one of these, well, actually a couple of these corpuses of language. And Italian speakers of English, for example. So that means people who are Italian, their first language is Italian, but they've learnt English and they can speak English. 99% of the time they talk about the future, they use the word will. 1% they use going to. French, 98% of the time. French speakers of English, they use will 98% of the time, and 2% of the time they use going to, and pretty much nothing else. Germans a little bit better, 93.5% they use will when talking about the future, 6.5%. When you check the corpuses, it varies a lot for native speakers. It's actually pretty much 50-50. We use will a little bit more in more formal writing, and in speaking we use going to. Or gonna, actually, which I'll come to at the end. Gonna is going to. There were measurements of the percentage of times that native speakers of English and non-native speakers of English use will and going to, and clearly there's a difference there. So, students use will all the time. Native speakers do not. We use will, but not all the time. And I think this is the key to what makes somebody sound natural when they speak English, when they are talking about the future. So what do we use? What do native speakers use when we talk about the future instead of will? And what is the difference? Because there is a difference. As I say, these are not grammar lessons. You can look up these things in great detail. That's why I don't use visuals. It's just me talking, basically, and my observations. If you've got any observations yourself, why not put them in the comments below? Okay, so English is very exact, actually. When we talk about the future, we can be very exact about how sure we are something is going to happen, or how planned something is, which is, in English, is pretty much the same. It's very planned. If we're very certain this is going to happen, we tend to use different forms than if we're not so sure. Let's take the two main forms out of the 4 or 5 forms we use for the future, which are not so sure. We love the word might. Native speakers, you love the word might. Students of English hate this word. They very rarely use it. I guess it's because of the spelling, this strange spelling, M-I-G-H-T, and we pronounce it might. But we love it, and we use might quite often for the future. When, in what situations do we use it? We use it when it's 50-50, we don't know. So if I say it might rain tomorrow, basically I don't know, it might not rain tomorrow. I might go to the party. Don't plan on me being at the party because, you know, I might not go to the party. So might, I think, is pretty much 50-50. There are 2 more words which are similar to might, not as popular with native speakers. Might, may and could. It may rain tomorrow, it might rain tomorrow, it could rain tomorrow. I might go to the party tomorrow, I may go to the party tomorrow, I could go to the party tomorrow. They are slightly different, but might by a long way is much more popular with native speakers. So when we're not sure about something, we use might. Students don't use might. When we're a little bit more sure, but still not concrete, when we're thinking probably, or I think, or maybe, and especially when we use those phrases, I think and maybe and probably, native speakers, we tend to use in that situation will. So if you want to be mathematical about it, we can say when we're 50% sure about something, we say I might do something, this might happen. When we're a little bit more sure but still not concrete, we say I will probably go to the party, it will probably rain tomorrow. This is, I don't know, what is that, 60, 70% at the most sure. It's still not very concrete. So the problem is, because students, as we've just looked, 98, 99, 90-something% of the time use will, it sounds very unnatural because it sounds like you are never really very sure about what you're going to do and what's going to happen at the weekend. That's a bit strange because we usually in life have to organise things, you know. So you sound like someone, if you use will all the time, like someone who is not very sure, is not very concrete, is not very organised, actually. And that's a bit strange, and that sounds foreign, basically. So what do we use, native speakers, when we are sure about something, when we are organised, when we have planned something and we know, or sure that something is going to happen? I've just used what we use, going to. This is when we use going to. It's the concrete form. It's when we have a plan. It's when we're sure. You're never 100% sure about something in the future, but we're pretty sure. If I say I'm going to go to the party, it's going to rain tomorrow, he's going to win the competition, Liverpool are going to win the Premier League, which is true, by the way, as of this year, 2020. We're very sure about that. Liverpool is 21 points, I think, ahead of the nearest rival. There's no doubt they're going to win. We're often not sure about the weather, but if you watch the weather and it says storms and stuff like that, then you'd say it's going to rain tomorrow. I'm going to go to the party. You're sure you're going to go to the party. So this is the concrete kind of construction we use. Going to when we're sure, when we plan something. And there are a couple of others we use. The main other one we use is we use present continuous when we actually say a time or a date. We have to say a time or date, otherwise it sounds like present continuous you're talking about now. I'll give you an example of that. I'm meeting my friends tomorrow at 8 a.m. in the morning. There's a day and there's a time there. It feels more natural to us. This is more concrete. So we can be mathematical about this. We can say might is about 50-50. Will is 60-70% sure. Going to is 80-90% sure. And present continuous, I'm doing something tomorrow, something's happening tomorrow, is like 99% sure. Like I say, I don't think we're ever 100% sure what's going to happen about the future. So what we do is, as native speakers, we jump between those four things, because when you're talking about one particular thing in the future, your plans for the weekend, very often some things are 50-50, some things are probable, some things are more concrete, and some things are certain. So we will say something like this: tomorrow I'm meeting my friends at 8. We'll probably go for a walk. It might rain tomorrow, so we might go and see a film. We're going to meet in the centre of Gdynia, and we're going to be together for a few hours. We will probably have a really nice time, and we're going to drink something in the evening, so I'm not going to go by car. All right, in that little thing I just said there about plans for the weekend, I used all those forms. I used might, I used going to, I used will, I used a present continuous there. And that's why it sounds natural. A native speaker would speak like this: I will meet my friends tomorrow, we will meet at 8 o'clock, we will drink some wine in the evening, we will, it will rain tomorrow probably, so we will go and see a film, blah, blah, blah. Doesn't sound natural, does it? And that, I think, is the big difference between how native speakers talk about the future and how foreigners do. So please, if you want to sound natural about the future, learn those things. As I say, I'm not going to explain in the great detail the grammar here. There are thousands of websites online you can check will, going to, and the forms and so on. A couple of last things I'd like to point out. When we ask a question about people's plans, I've noticed this. I've not really seen this explained in very many places, but it's in my experience. Native speakers, we tend to use going to when we ask about questions for the future. And students tend to use will. And I'll give you an example. We tend to say, what are you going to do tomorrow? Are you going to go to the cinema? Are you going to be busy next week? Are you going to meet your friends? When you ask about plans, we tend to use going to. Students tend to use will. What will you do tomorrow? Will you meet your friends? What will you do? And that's not wrong grammatically. Grammatically, it's fine, but it's not natural. It sounds a bit foreign. So if you're asking questions about plans, which we do often in normal conversation, people's plans or plans of somebody else, use going to. It's much more natural. And the last thing I want to mention is this gonna. It's not American. British and Australians and all native speakers use gonna a lot. It's in speaking, of course. You hear it in songs, but you shouldn't really use it in writing. Gonna is going to. It's short for going to. So instead of saying I'm going to meet my friends tomorrow, we would often say I'm gonna meet my friends tomorrow. We're gonna drink some wine in the evening. We're gonna go and see a film. All of those are actually going to. Should you use it? Yeah, you can. You don't have to. It also sounds pretty natural to use going to, because we use going to as well as gonna. Gonna is the same. If you use gonna, remember it's going to. You can't repeat to, so you can't say I'm gonna to go. That's wrong. I've heard sometimes people do that. Learners do that. But to be honest with you, stick to going to. When you start speaking fluently and fast, it starts to become gonna anyway, because gonna is just a kind of fast version of going to. All right, so to sum up, use might when you talk about the future and it's 50-50. Use will if it's probable. I think I will do this. This will probably happen. Use going to for plans and concrete arrangements. And if you have an exact time or date of something, use present continuous. We're meeting at 4, the plane's leaving at 5, the party's starting at 8. And if you do that, instead of always using will, your English, when you talk about the future, will immediately sound much more natural and, well, much less foreign.